Here's J-Pat, our Canucks reporter, one half of the Rink-Wide duo with Andrew Wadden. Good afternoon.
Yeah, except for anybody that cheers for the Vancouver Canucks, I suppose. Not such a great day. Unbelievable, guys. When you think of what went down in Ottawa the night before, and they know they got away with one, but the one thing they did well was show up and perform and play hard in the third period. And you thought that was going to be the springboard into Montreal, and less than a minute in for the second night in a row, they give up a goal, and then it just kind of spiraled away from there. This team is so hard to understand. It's so hard to figure out. And there have been some poor performances this year, but that one, I'm holding that one up as Exhibit A. I think that might have been as bad as it's been in the 14 of the games that they've played so far. And look, Bruce had no explanation after either. He's sort of at wit's end and has run out of trying to figure out his hockey club, and they're only 14 games into this thing.
It's funny. I no longer leave any room for middle ground on the Canucks games when I'm trying to prognosticate what's going to happen, Jeff. Like going into that game last night, I thought to myself, they either play really well and win the hockey game, or they play terribly again. Like there's never a thought right now for me that they're going to go out, compete, and lose a tight, great played on both sides 3-2 contest. Like those don't seem to be in the cards for the Vancouver Canucks. They're either just going to outscore their problems, like an 8-5 win over the Ducks, or they're going to get shellacked. And there doesn't seem to be much in between.
Yeah, and talk is so cheap. But you think back to the start of training camp, even when they all, to a man, recognized the importance of the early season and getting off to a quick start, because clearly they learned their lesson from last year. And then 3 games in, they're having a players-only meeting, and the coach is targeting players and messaging them with scratches and calling them mentally weak. And then the president of the hockey ops takes to the airwaves the other day. All of this, even the Nashville game the other night when they frittered away a 3-0 lead. Post-game, it was all about tough lessons, but they'll be better for it in the long run. And then you see a performance like last night. And, when are these lessons going to kick in for the Vancouver Canucks? I'm still wondering about that. You're right, Blake. In a 3-2 league, the Canucks just say, what? 3-2? Come on. that doesn't exist. And Andrew and I got into it on Rink-Wide last night after the game. Like, the opening minute was shocking, the entire sequence of Tanner Pearson taking yet another minor penalty behind the other team's net. So an offensive zone penalty when he knows his team can't kill penalties. Another fast strike power play that 12 seconds for the Habs, and there were the Canucks down a goal. But as bad as that first minute was, for me, the first 10 seconds of the third period were incredible. After all that the Canucks had endured for the first 40 minutes, they're down 4-0, and you're thinking professional pride has to kick in. It did in Ottawa the night before. They have enough firepower that they can get into this game. And in the first 10 seconds of the third period on fresh ice, Montreal won the faceoff, went D-to-D, and then just carved right through the Canucks. And Mike Hoffman had this incredible chance, and there wasn't a single one of the Canucks 5 skaters that looked like he gave a damn. And I just thought those 10 seconds sort of encapsulated the entire night for the Vancouver Canucks, and how that can possibly happen and how it can be acceptable. It's beyond me, but yet we've seen a number of periods like that from the Vancouver Canucks. But I just thought, really, at 4-0, this is the way you're going to start the third period. Nobody seemed to want to make any sort of effort. And I'm amazed that Thatcher Demko made a stop, quite frankly. I'm amazed that Hoffman didn't score. But
especially that guy, Jeff. Like, if there's one thing Mike Hoffman can do, it's shoot the puck. He'd already proven to you in the game. He's dangerous with the puck on his stick. I listened to all of that, and so I'm going to ask you a tough question, but do you think this is a team waiting for the coach to get fired?
I think it's a team that's waiting for the shoe to drop. I think they recognize that, a coach and a general manager and all the assistants got fired last year. So I think they're smart enough to recognize the financial implications, and maybe that does spare the coach for a while. It's pretty evident that Bruce isn't long for this job. Whether that means he coaches to the end of the season, who knows? But they do look like a group now that's feeling sorry for themselves. They don't look like a group that's pulling on the rope in the same direction. And yeah, I mean, a lot of that performance in Montreal looked to me like a team that figures something is going to happen, whether that is finally carving this core, major surgery, enough of the, draft pick out and Jack Studnicka in kind of trades. Those are baby steps when you're trying to, make improvements. But it's so evident that they've got some really good players. They do. I mean, nobody can sit there and look at the Canucks roster and think that they don't have talented players, but there's clearly something wrong with this mix. And I do think the time has come to make some changes. I don't see how they move forward as a group because they're not playing like a group. They don't seem to care about one another an awful lot, despite what they say. Again, talk is cheap. And it just sort of feels like this group is spinning its wheels. And the next move, I think, will have to be a core piece or two is traded out and the reconstruction will begin.
Well, I guess that has to be Horvat, Jeff. I mean,
I don't think so. I think you could trade Brock Besser. I'm not sure what you'd get for him right now, but that would free up a lot of money. If you want to keep Bo Horvat and you want this idea of 3 centers, I think Bo Horvat, I think there's a way to keep Horvat, but whether it's Besser, whether it's Connor Garland, whether, we addressed this on the pod post-game too. I wish Thatcher Demko was playing a little bit better. I wonder if he would be a trade chip at this point because goaltending is so finicky. And by the time the Canucks are truly competitive, is it going to be in the remainder of this contract for Thatcher Demko? Or if he gets back in his game, by the time that they arrive as a group, he's one of those guys that's going to need another contract extension as well. And so I don't know. Collection of players in the bubble, fine. But the bubble feels like a lifetime ago now, and we can't keep going back to the bubble. Time marches on, and it just feels like this collection isn't the right mix, and something's got to give here.
Speaking of Demko, and I think we can all agree if Demko's been better, we're probably just talking about a middling team right now, not a team in crisis.
No.
Our Bodog poll question, what is wrong with Thatcher Demko? He's hurt, slow start, step back season, poor team defense. Feel free to go off the board. What says you, Jeff Paterson?
Yeah, for the longest time, I thought slow start. Now I'm starting to wonder a little bit because the other night against Nashville, the home game, and I was there in the locker room for that one, wasn't in Montreal last night, but I know that requests were made by the media to speak to Thatcher Demko, and they were told he's unavailable. Now, maybe he is getting treatment. That's a possibility. I don't think getting treatment is enough of a reason not to speak. Guys will wait out players. We've all done it. Treatment doesn't go on forever. But if, in fact, he is getting treatment, maybe that is a hint and a clue that, there is some sort of fallout from whatever the procedure was. And he never copped. He did admit that, yes, there was some sort of procedure. It was minor in nature. And, it delayed his off-season training by a little bit. But he thought in some ways maybe that was a good thing because he was eager to get back on the ice, and it forced him to be a little bit patient. So I do wonder if there are some medical complications, but you're not playing in the NHL, especially at that position, if you're 70% or 80% and in danger of doing more. So I don't know that he can lean on the injury, but I do find it a little bit curious at the very least. And quite frankly, look, he is part of this core group. He is part of the leadership group, even if he doesn't wear a letter. It can't just be on Bo Horvat to stand in there and face the music after these losses. He is a big part of this storyline of 4 wins in 14 games and the fact that he has one of them and Spencer Martin has the other 3. And so, it's not a fun subject. I'm sure he doesn't want to talk about his failings right now, but I do think he owes it not so much to the fans. Fans are curious and we in the media always want answers, but I think to his teammates. You can't just go in the back room and say, hey, treatment, I'm not available. At some point, I do think you have to answer for your performance.
Here.
JT Miller's giveaways are going to get a lot of the are so commonplace these days. They're almost skimmed over. I think poor Jack Rathbone's foibles are probably going to get the spotlight. Although, were you surprised by how Bruce Boudreau couched them? He was a little protective of his younger player last night after the game, but are those 2 giveaways going to be treated equally, or does one guy take it on the chin more than the other, do you think?
Yeah, it's a full off day for the team after back-to-backs, and that's not a surprise. This isn't a result of what happened last night. They're getting a day off. They will practice tomorrow in Toronto, and I guess we'll get a better sense then of what Bruce is thinking with his forward groupings. So we'll get an update on Tanner Pearson, who left the game, and we were told afterwards that there was some sort of injury there. And then for Rathbone, of course, they've got these extra bodies. And so when you get in, you have to perform. And I know this fan base wants it to happen for Jack Rathbone, but then you see nights like last night, puck skips over his stick on the Hoffman goal. And then the 5th goal, and the game is probably out of reach by then, 5 minutes to go. But still, you're a defenseman in the NHL. You've got to clear the zone. When you have the puck on your stick, you've got to move that puck out. And he didn't. And then that just kind of compounded the problems. He starts running around. Tyler Myers, his defense partner, didn't really help the cause. And there's Kirby Dach wide open. for his second goal of the night. So it was not a banner night for Jack Rathbone, and the numbers haven't been kind to him. And again, I think we all see that he skates well, but if you're a defenseman in the NHL, you've got to be able to defend, and that's been the knock on him. And I'm not sure that we're any further ahead on really knowing if this guy can hold up his end of the bargain in the defensive end of the ice. So it wasn't a great night for anybody, Rathbone included. And yeah, the coach kind of soft-sold it a little bit. I think the coach had other guys in his crosshairs last night, other concerns, obviously. But he does have a decision to make here. And we've said for a while, like, Kyle Burroughs is versatile. He can play both sides. He's played well when he's played. And for whatever reason, he's the odd man out right now. Is it as simple as going back to Kyle Burroughs? Do you go back to Riley Stillman? Or do you come back with Jack Rathbone and sort of pat him on the back and say, hey, those things are going to happen, but you got to tidy them up. But this is a bottom line business. And he certainly did not have a banner second half, I didn't think, to the hockey game.
It's a bottom line business, but some teams are okay getting you to figure out the bottom line. Like Montreal Canadiens, look at that defense that they had last night.
4 rookie defensemen.
And you're telling me that, and they were pretty good last night, obviously, but look at their record. There's been a lot of nights where those rookies, I'm sure, are absolutely ventilated, but they get to learn on the fly, because the bottom line just doesn't matter to the Montreal Canadiens right now. Getting them experience does. So you just wonder, at what point do the Vancouver Canucks, and in particular the coach,
that's not allowed here, Blake. That's not allowed here. You're not allowed to have a season where you develop young players. It's got to be playoff or bust each and every year. All eggs in the 1 year basket.
And I guess I'm asking, is that still the case? Will that ever not be the case?
Well, and I know you're talking about the defense, but I just think it would have been fascinating to see. If Tanner Pearson is injured and can't play, that's one thing. But with his performance and the 2 offensive zone penalties last night, and the fact that he's taken 8 minor penalties in 14 games, like, if ever there was a time to sit a guy down, you'd think Tanner Pearson, and bringing a veteran out of the lineup. They've already done it with Garland once. So I'm curious to see what Pearson's status is, because I think that really would have been, like, the time has come. This guy's got 1 goal. Like, what's keeping him in the lineup? You can't say, oh, he's part of the penalty kill. Penalty kill's at 60%. So, like, the time has come, I think. And Jim Rutherford the other day on the radio did talk about holding players accountable. So, you know, I've used Tanner Pearson there as an example. I don't know what's going on, if he's just lost a step. He took 9 minor penalties in the 68 games he played last year. He's got 8 in the first 14, and 5 of those are hooking penalties. So, you know, as the league gets faster, is he just losing a step? Is that his first inclination, is to put a stick on a guy? But just a brutal start last night for him. As for the fans, another night. Think back to the Brendan Gallagher and Thatcher Demko, and you know, when we talk about Demko, and just another example of him being out of sorts. Like, what's he doing fighting Brendan Gallagher? But, you know, I guess everybody reaches their boiling point at some point. But that whole play starts with Evgeny Dadonov just skating right past Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Like, just breezed right past him, takes the puck to the net. Gallagher follows up, and then the chaos ensues. And so we kind of come back to this idea of, you know, will we ever get to that where some of these veterans are sat down? And it's hard to imagine right now. Bruce Boudreau is coaching for his coaching life and trying to stay in the National Hockey League. I can't imagine that that's the route that he would take at this stage, but you do wonder, and we wondered yesterday when we talked before the Montreal game, what's OEL got on the back half of back-to-backs? Well, guess what's coming up here on the weekend? Toronto on Saturday, Boston on Sunday. And this defense core isn't good enough when they're rested and fresh. And when you put the strain of miles in the National Hockey League and back-to-back assignments and those types of things, this team is exposed. And I know it was back-to-back for Montreal as well, so it can't be an excuse for the Canucks, but they were dreadful. And, I think last night there were some issues around the structure. I've sort of defended Bruce Boudreau to a point about structure and systems and all those types of things, but that first period last night, it was just self-inflicted, from the Pearson penalty to Pearson losing the face-off that led to the second goal to JT Miller and his turnover. It wasn't like the Montreal. I thought Ottawa pressured the Canucks early in the hockey game the night before. I just thought Montreal was Montreal, and the Canucks shot themselves in the foot time and time and time again.
Guys, is Tanner Pearson tradable? Because here's the other thing. Here's another Jim Benning special contract that's got poison pills as it goes along. He's on $3 million this year, $3.25 million cap hit. He's owed a $1.5 million signing bonus at the beginning of the next league year, and then 2.75 in base salary. So he's $4.25 next year, cash in hand.
And I think the Jason Dickinson trade is pretty instructive in all of this. I am certain that they tried to move Tanner Pearson in the offseason, and no takers because there is still an additional year. If this was the final year of his contract at the deadline, maybe some team would look past the flaws and the fast, that he's not foot speed and all those types of things, but the championship pedigree. Because for the most part, Tanner Pearson, and Travis Green used to say it, Bruce Boudreau said it, low maintenance, just a thorough pro, but something has changed here in his game in the early going. And so with an extra year on the contract, the fact that the speed of the game looks like it's passing by, one goal in 14 games, and that goal is his only point in the last 8 games as well. I don't think he's tradable. I think if he had been tradable, they would have moved him, and you saw what happened with Dickinson. They had to attach a second rounder. They probably could have attached a second rounder to Pearson. My guess is they looked at the two players and thought, all right, Tanner Pearson likely to have a little bit more value for us, and actually had a decent season last year. So I'm not sure what's happened to Tanner Pearson, but this was always the fear when they committed 3 years. We said it wasn't so much the first year, it's what's that going to look like as the years march along here. And right now, he is, they're getting nothing. Absolutely nothing out of him. In fact, they're getting minus negative value because he's taking these penalties and they can't kill them. And first minute of play last night, his selfish actions put this team behind the 8 ball.
Guys, is it too incendiary to put him on waivers? You don't have to do anything with him. You don't have to send him down. But maybe you do. Maybe you don't. And that sends a message without actually having to really do anything. Waivers are pretty innocuous. You just put a guy on waivers. If he gets claimed, he gets claimed. If he doesn't, fine, keep him on the team or send him down, whatever you want. But does that not send a message to the team?
I'm with Jeff. I'd healthy scratch him here at some point, but I don't object to waivers.
Look, he's got to be healthy to be healthy scratch, and we just don't know the extent of what. Yeah. So exactly. I'll be curious to see if he's able to play. If he's in the lineup on Saturday, though, then like that to me, you sat out Dakota Joshua. Like Dakota Joshua is giving you every bit as much as Tanner Pearson has at a much more affordable price point, and so there are decisions to be made here. But I think the progression, Blake, would be healthy scratch, try to send the message that way. But I'm not against it. Like, again, with this group and the way they're performing, like there can't be a single guy on this roster that's comfortable and thinking that he's untouchable. Like, I'm getting to that point now where I don't think there are any untouchables on this Vancouver Canucks roster.
Lastly, Jeff, biggest night ever for the Vancouver Canucks at the Hockey Hall of Fame Monday. And going into a weekend where we're going to celebrate the Sedin twins and Roberto Luongo in Toronto there near the at the home of the Hall. A word or two on just the crazy juxtaposition here between the big celebration and all of the club history that's going to be celebrated and where they're at right now.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the impassioned speech that Stan Smeel gave almost 12 months ago when he was interim GM there for a brief second. And then I think of last week when Kevin Bieksa speaks and addresses the players and talks about the value of culture. And then we get a week like this one where the president is popping off and the players basically no show in Montreal. And it's just when you think of the heights that Sedin led, Luongo obviously a big part of it as well. That team was just in lockstep. I think they actually truly liked each other and like playing for each other, and obviously got within a win in the Stanley Cup and probably should have won the cup, but didn't get there. But that's when it was fun. It was fun to be at the rink. It was fun to be around that group. It was fun to watch these guys perform at the highest level. And there's just nothing fun about the Vancouver Canucks right now. It's just, it's a shame in some ways, because I'm sure these questions are going to be posed to Daniel and Henrik and Roberto, and they got to answer for the sins of this current group of Vancouver Canucks. And the Twins are still in the organization, but this should be a week to celebrate the greatness of these guys. And you just hope that they can put the current state of affairs aside for a couple of days to have their moment in the hockey sun.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. We'll be listening to Rinkwide through the weekend here. Appreciate this, and we'll catch up on Monday, my friend.
All right. Have a great weekend, guys.